Hey, you're watching ABC News Live. I'm Alicia Menendez. Well, after several days of uncharacteristic restraint, President Trump taking to Twitter to undermine claims against his Supreme Court nominee. And in North Carolina, cleanup efforts are underway, but the fallout from Hurricane Florence is far from over. We've got all that and more. Our correspondents are standing by. But first, take a look at your headlines.
Gunfire at a memorial service in Syracuse, New York.
We had 5 victims total. The ages range from 8 years old to 35 years old.
My daughter was a beautiful person.
The mother of murdered D.C. jogger Wendy Martinez is speaking. Cora Martinez says her daughter was the happiest she's been, having just gone shopping for her wedding.
She was trying out her wedding dress. But I was saying that as a mother, I never figured it out when I saw my daughter in that dress that she was buying that dress for her burial.
Prosecutors say 23-year-old Anthony Crawford stabbed Martinez to death on Tuesday.
And California's governor has signed a law banning full-service restaurants from automatically handing out plastic straws. On average, Americans are richer than when the Great Recession started. The Federal Reserve says the rising stock market has lifted overall U.S. wealth to nearly $107 trillion.
And a quick workout may be better than a long one. A new study now says just 2 minutes of high-intensity exercise is better for the health of your cells than a 30-minute long moderate workout.
This is iPhone XS.
Apple's new flagship models, the XS and XS Max, go on sale today, so you might expect some lines at an Apple store near you.
All right, well, anyone who's watching on that new expensive iPhone, I expect a full report. Let's go to our first story. It's a big one. It's one we've been tracking all week, this back and forth over Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing. Will his accuser, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, testify next week? We want to bring in two of our favorite correspondents. Terry Moran and Karen Travers are both standing by. Guys, I know you both saw this tweet, but I want to read it for people who are watching. The president up early this morning tweeting, "I have no doubt that if the attack on Dr. Ford was as bad as she says, charges would have been immediately filed with local law enforcement authorities by either her or her loving parents. I ask that she bring those filings forward so that we can learn date, time, and place, exclamation point. And then the radical left lawyers want the FBI to get involved now. Why didn't someone call the FBI 36 years ago?" Wow. Okay, Karen, all week we have been talking about the president's uncharacteristic restraint. Well, that is now over. What gives?
Yeah, if he was holding to some type of strategy to keep his responders measured and muted, well, the president tossed out the playbook early this morning from Las Vegas with that tweet. Alicia, this is the first time the president has mentioned Christine Blasey Ford by name. He has only referred to her, but no explicit references. He also hasn't talked about the allegation she has made, and he hasn't repeated Brett Kavanaugh's denials. But there, in that tweet, the president certainly casting his own doubts on her story, saying that if this was as bad as she says, she would have come forward and reported it. But of course, as we know from Christine Blasey Ford's interview with the Washington Post, she didn't tell anybody anything about what she says happened to her several decades ago until recently.
Terry, do the president's tweets impact the negotiations that are already underway about next week's testimonies?
Well, I think for sure it would, because it shows that this is not, as far as the president of the United States, whose own nominee is really on the stand here, it's not a quest for truth. It is really now a bare-knuckled political fight. And I got to tell you, that tweet, or really it's a taunt, it's a kind of spiteful taunt. You could teach how not to handle a sexual misconduct allegation. Look, there are a lot of lawyers around the country who defend these allegations, and it's very difficult. Put yourself, if you were Brett Kavanaugh's lawyer right now, he has to do the logically impossible thing of proving a negative, that he didn't do this. And the burden of proof is on him, rightly so, because it's the Supreme Court of the United States we're talking about. Now, there are ways of doing that, not taunting and essentially denigrating the account of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford here. There are ways. Look, it made especially difficult for Kavanaugh because there's no place, no time that he can say I wasn't there. But there are skilled lawyers who will try to call into question aspects of her story, bolster his. It's a very delicate, very difficult thing. You don't do it the way the President of the United States just tried to do it.
Right. And Karen, it strikes me that you have the president tweeting about the radical left, that this has now become highly politicized. How does that affect the negotiations?
Yeah, and for now, the president had only referred to this as a process, and he had been signaling for days, Alicia, that he was willing to let that process play out. Uncharacteristically patient of the president, saying, you know, if there's a delay in Kavanaugh's confirmation vote, he was fine with that, because as the president said last night, everything is going to be just fine. So expressing confidence that ultimately Kavanaugh would be confirmed. But now he is going after the Democrats much more explicitly than he has. He has criticized Dianne Feinstein for not coming forward with this letter earlier, but now he is calling this flat-out politics, as he said, under assault by radical left-wing politicians who he says don't want to know the answers. And then a president who, of course, has some credibility issues. The president writes on Twitter that facts don't matter, and that's something that he deals with every day in Washington with his political enemies.
So, Terry, I'm going to ask you the question that I've been asking you all week, which is, where are we? I mean, what's going to happen on Monday? Can we expect testimony next week?
Well, I think as we talked about, President Trump just complicated these very delicate negotiations. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford has several conditions for her testimony. She wants the senators themselves to question her, not get an outside counsel. I'm not sure if what that is an attempt to stage manage these hearings and have her only questioned by Republican men. I'm not sure that's her place, and that sounds almost theatrical rather than factual. The Republicans are looking for somebody perhaps who knows how to do this respectfully and factually, and perhaps a woman. There are plenty of litigators who could do that. So there are these delicate issues of negotiation. She may not ever get to testify, but I think both sides want it to happen. I think by the end of the week, we will see, by the end of next week, I should say, we will see both Judge Kavanaugh and Christine Blasey Ford testify. Christine Blasey Ford first. She wanted Kavanaugh to go first, which isn't really logical. She's lodging the accusation. He will answer it. But then he is in the worst position in public opinion polling of any Supreme Court nomination ever. It may be one of the reasons you see really President Trump taking the gloves off here. So he's going to have to do something. He's going to have to appear before the committee and demonstrate that she is not telling the truth. It's going to get rough.
All right, Terry, Karen, thank you both so much. Let's head over now to Maryland, where we have David Curley there with the latest on that terrible shooting. David?
Alicia, this Rite Aid distribution center you see behind me remains closed this morning as police continue their investigation. And there is one question. Why did this 26-year-old woman from Baltimore County open fire on her fellow employees, leaving 3 of them dead and 3 in the hospital being treated for gunshot wounds? This all happened at 9 o'clock in the morning. The 26-year-old employee, whose name is Snowshun Mosley, arrived for work as normal. The Associated Press is quoting a fellow worker who told his wife that he said the woman was having an argument with another employee and then, quote, went off and started firing a 9mm gun in several directions, hitting those 6 fellow employees. He says, according to the Associated Press, she didn't appear to be targeting anyone specifically, but was randomly fired. That started outside this distribution center. She then moved inside the distribution center and pointed the gun at herself and took her own life. She died at the hospital. So you have 4 dead here, 3 being treated. This is the latest workplace incident in about 24 hours. There was one in Philadelphia and another in the Midwest as well the day before on Wednesday. Police say they are continuing to try and figure out a motive. A friend is quoted by the Baltimore Sun as saying that Mosley had felt like the world was against her, but that she was not an angry person, and suggests that maybe she was emotionally distressed. Police will brief reporters again later today as to what they believe may have been the motive here in this latest workplace shooting. Alicia?
All right, David, thank you so much. Let's head over now to North Carolina, where we have Marcus Moore. Of course, the storm hit more than a week ago. The state still still working on its cleanup efforts. All right, Marcus, we have these cleanup efforts underway, but I know that people are anxious to get home. What are authorities saying?
Well, Alicia, that's right. Those cleanup efforts are underway, and that's a great sign, but authorities are saying this is not over yet. This is still developing, and one of the most striking things you'll see when you come to downtown Wilmington, North Carolina, where we are, is the Cape Fear River. It is at historic levels right now, Alicia, and you may be able to see on the screen there that strong current, and every now and again there are bits and pieces of debris, logs, and foliage that is going downstream with that current. And it's been high since Hurricane Florence hit a week ago today, and officials are keeping a very close eye on that river and several others because these rivers are expected to continue to rise over the coming days, and not only will they threaten homes here in the region, but also potentially some of the downtown businesses here in North Carolina. And so we have seen those signs of progress, Alicia. In fact, a few moments ago, we saw some of the business owners using leaf blowers to clear away some of the debris that had collected here. And we've also seen some of the shops opening back up. But as that is happening, officials are saying that we still need to be keeping a close eye on the rivers and the potential for flooding. And to give you some perspective, at one point on the Cape Fear River, which is just behind me, the flood stage, it's supposed to crest at about 61 feet. The flood stage is 35 feet. So that gives you some sense of how historic this is. And Alicia, why authorities are so concerned.
Marcus, I got to tell you, for those of us who are not there, not on the ground, watching you walk around, it looks like the weather is lovely. It must be easy to imagine that this crisis is over. How do the authorities make sure that people understand that it is not yet safe to go home, that there are still complications on those roadways, and how much longer are they telling people that they're going to need to wait before they can go and check on their homes?
You know, Alicia, looks can very much be deceiving, and I can tell you that it is a warm day, and it is a nice day, relatively speaking, that the rain has stopped. But for some context here, authorities are telling people who have evacuated to stay away, and here's the reason why. The floodwaters continue to rise, and yesterday, Highway 421, which is here in New Hanover County, it was open while we were here, but then throughout the course of the day, officials had to close it. And so the concern is, as this continues to develop, officials have even warned people, Alicia, that not to drive because your GPS could lead you right into floodwaters. And they're saying that it's just, at this point, it's just too dangerous for everyone to come back.
So Marcus, when you're talking to residents, I mean, how are they coping?
Residents are coping as well as they can. I went out last night, as a matter of fact, on what was really the first night that people here have been able to get out and kind of do the things that they ordinarily do. Go to a restaurant, listen to some music, maybe grab a drink. And last night was the first opportunity they had to do that. And certainly it's an encouraging sign for people, particularly when the power came back, because after Hurricane Florence hit, the power went out. Jim, go ahead and walk with me back this way. So it was a sign, an encouraging sign that things are returning to normal, and that's exactly what people want after such a devastating storm. But Alicia, a lot of people still concerned about the residents who have not been able to return to their homes, or the ones who have actually suffered their homes sustained some damage, and they'll have a lot to clean up and a long road to recovery.
All right, Marcus, thank you so much for your great reporting. Let's head over now to Ginger Z to get the latest on the weather across the country. Ginger?
Alicia, thank you. Let's go ahead and get started with some of those weather headlines. Severe weather is the headline for the weekend, at least going in here on our Friday. Elysian, Minnesota gives us a little preview of what could happen in other areas today because you have that driving rain and then the winds, 60+ mile per hour. Faribault, Minnesota, likely a tornado that damaged that hangar, flipped that plane. They're going to do the damage survey today. But watch what happens when it moved to Ohio, takes down trees. It's easy to do that when you've got 60+ mile per hour winds, especially in the area that it's going now. We've had such a saturated summer from Ohio through Pennsylvania and western New York, and now this cold front's going to come through, lift up the atmosphere, and splash out some really strong winds. And so you could easily have 60 to 70 mile per hour winds taking down trees anywhere from Cleveland to Bradford, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, you're in it. This is later afternoon and evening, depends on exact location, but it's certainly something that we should be watching for today. Alicia?
All right, thanks so much, Ginger. Well, as a person who lives in Florida, I love a good Florida man story, but this one might just take the cake. A student hopped a fence, boarded a plane. Authorities got him, but still a lot of questions remain unanswered. I want to bring in Victor Oquendo, who has more for us. Victor, what happened here?
Well, Alicia, hopefully we'll get some of those questions answered a little later today. That student pilot is supposed to appear before a judge later on this afternoon. Authorities say that 22-year-old Nishal Sankat left his car running outside of the Orlando Melbourne International Airport around 1:30 in the morning Thursday. He pulled up his car, left it there. He jumps out, somehow scales. He hops right over a barbed wire fence and then makes his way on board an American Airlines Airbus 321 jet. It normally holds nearly 200 passengers. The plane was empty at the time. It was in for some scheduled maintenance. It was getting some Wi-Fi upgrades. 2 technicians happened to be on board at the time working on that plane. They tried stopping Sankat. They first asked him to see his badge or his ID. Obviously, he didn't have anything like that. Things escalated. They eventually tackled him to the ground. He managed to break free and then took off running along the tarmac. And just a minute later, police were able to arrest him. Sankat now facing several charges, including criminal trespassing and attempting to steal an airplane. You have a lot of agencies now investigating this one, including the FBI and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, but still no word on a motive here.
No word on a motive. That, of course, being one of the biggest questions. But I think some of the other biggest questions being, how is this possible? How did this happen? And what type of precautions are authorities ready to put in place to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, airport officials, when asked why do they think this happened, they actually said themselves that they are puzzled. And when asked if they would make any changes to security, they actually said that all of their protocols worked because they were able to stop this guy. So as far as making any changes to security at that airport, they said that they're good.
I remain a little suspicious. All right, Victor Oquendo, thanks so much. That does it for us, but if you want more news, you can head over to abcnews.com. And as always, download our app. We'll see you tomorrow.